Hello and welcome to Noah's Ark Carpentry. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make a router table for less than $5. For me, I'm making it for free besides the cost of the router. I can just take it off and put it back on when I want. But I'm just using scrap here. I have it pre-assembled, but I'm going to be showing you how to build it. Now you can attach it to your workbench. For me, I'm just having the legs to the height of the workbench, and I'm going to be using a hinge, so I can just take the legs off and fold it up underneath. Let's get started.
Alright, so to begin, I started by pre-drilling my holes for the hinges. You want to begin by placing the hinge down, outlining it with your pencil. Make sure the outline's level to where you want it on your exact location. For me, I just pretty much centered it in my workpiece. Then I began by making a pin. Now for the top two, for my stud, I used 3-inch screws, and I made a pin with the 3-inch screw. After that, I made sure it was level, and I used the other 3-inch screw to go right through the stud. Now for the paneling, I used an 1.5-inch screw, just wood screws. And then after that, I continued to make my markings, which I already had made on that board. You can make that board whatever size you'd like, whatever really works for you, honestly. But for me, this one works perfectly and fits on my workbench perfect. So once you have those holes pre-drilled, you want to be using a 1/16 drill bit. For me, I'm using a titanium bit that just has a quick bit adjustment. So once you pre-drill those holes, line it up. It's easier to start it with the screwdriver. This part's kind of funny right here. Watch me drop the board. Now, pre-drill your holes, set it in. See, I just put it in there with my hand because I already had it pre-drilled. Then just drill it in. Make sure it's nice and tight. Begin by doing one, and then make sure it lines up, and then continue with the rest. After doing so, the next step will be to attach the legs. Now, the material you see me using that is attached to the hinge for the platform, it is just a basic shelving material. You can pick this up at Lowe's, you can pick this up at Home Depot, Harbor Freight. You'll see it in the lumber section. It should be by the framing aisle. Now, I like this material, especially for my workbenches, because I picked this material up for free at a construction site, as I explained earlier. But for me, I like a workbench that I can mess up. I don't want a nice workbench that costs a bunch of money. I want something that I can just pop it off and replace if it gets messed up. That's why I choose to use this material, just because of how cheap and how efficient it is, because it always gives you a nice, plain, even surface. Now, when you're screwing in the hinges, you got to make sure that it is nice and plain. So if you have any screw heads coming out, just take your engineer file and just file those heads down. So for these legs, you want to make sure they're pre-drilled. And for the top parts, I did a countersink that's probably about 3/16 down, and I used the 3-inch screws to secure the legs. The legs are made out of a 3/4 inch pine, well, a 1-inch, 3/4 inch actual. So to make those pieces, all you have to do is cut a 2-inch strip and a 3-inch strip, make a miter, do a little bit of glue, pre-drill 1/16 inch, and take your 2.5-inch, maybe 2-inch screws and just screw it together. Now those came from an old table that I unassembled from a previous workbench that I made to look nice. Now I just had these laying around, so I cut them to size. It's plain, even, and quite frankly just looks nice. So I secured it with the 3-inch screws at the top, as you can see. Now a really good thing to do that I always do is I just set the screws in for about 3/16 into the board, and then I'll just make it just so the tip pops out just a little bit so I can pre-align it with my board before I put it in all the way. Then I sink it in. Then I sink the rest of the screws in. Okay, so now it is time to put up the middle support. This will prevent your table from wobbling. Now, you're going to want to countersink it, at least I did. You don't have to, depending on what material you're using. For me, I used 1.5" screws, so I just countersinked in about halfway into the board, and then I just preset the screws inside the board. Now for me, I'm putting it at 18 inches exactly, and I'm making sure that is nice and level. This will prevent your table from wobbling when you are doing your cuts. Now that is very important. You don't want your table to wobble, especially with something spinning so fast and having a free hand around it. You don't want it to slip up and it get your hand instead of the board, which is very, that would just suck. You don't want that. That's an emergency room visit right there. So I just preset the screws and I go underneath and I pin one. So once I pin one underneath on there, I set my level on top just to make sure it's nice and level. Now I'm putting it at approximately 18 inches. I just measured up. I'm not perfect, but I'm pretty good at estimating where 18 inches is at, or pretty much where anything on the tape measure would be. So I pin one, I put my level on, and I watch that bubble and I make sure it's perfectly even. Now this will just give you extra support, and it is well worth doing. Now when you're done, the reason I use the hinge to support it and not just a plate is because I want to be able to just take those 3-inch screws out, set that aside, and then fold it up. So whenever I need extra room in my tool room, or if I wanted to put my table saw on my table and then cutting a big board, I could wheel my cart over, which I also have a box for, that it is on wheels, so it is also playing with my table. So I'll also be showing you how to make that as well, along with my compressor cart that I'm going to be building. I'm going to be showing you how to do that in the next video. But for this is just an extra piece versus some more support. You only need it on one side really, because all the sawdust is going to be going to the left. So that dust collection, you can also attach a hose. It would be very simple. For me, I don't have a dust collection system. I don't rack up enough sawdust to really be worried about that. I just keep it clean. After making a few cuts, I'll sweep it up, throw it in a bag, save it. What I like to do with my sawdust is I like to save it for kindling, filling in holes, making wood filler. You can mix it with Titebond and a little bit of water and make an excellent wood filler. So for this, I'm not too worried about this being level. I'm just worried about this being nice and sturdy. So I use a 3-inch screws. And on the other side, I use about 1.5" screws just to secure it on there. So this is all scrap that I'm using. So my build cost is completely free, which I love that. Now for you, you might be able to go find construction sites in your areas or where homes are being renovated. And again, just ask them. You always want to make sure to ask, because you don't want to go dumpster diving or anything like that and then get shot for being on private property. Now, a lot of times I've never had an issue with them. They've always been more than happy because it saves them work throwing it in the dumpster, just setting it aside. Alright, well, moving on to the next part, the router. what you want to do is you want to find the center of your board. So what you do is you make sure your edges are square. So you start by making a square edge, and then you make a square edge on both sides, and then you go from corner to corner and you make a mark. So this will give you the center. Now what I did is I just went ahead and make a bunch of markings just to pre-align my fence really easy. And you can use quick clamps, but I prefer C-clamps because I know I can tighten those down and they're not going to go anywhere. Now for this table, it is extremely well at not shaking or anything like that. You have like no resistance whatsoever. So for what I did is I took the router. It comes with a plastic plate. You got to take that plastic plate off and align it in the center. I used my, I believe it's 1.5 inch hole saw, and I just drilled a hole right at the center. So there's that plastic plate I was referring to. So you're just going to want to align it, and it has 4 holes that line up with the holes on the DeWalt router. Now you might have a different version router, but for me, that's where I would align it up with. So you line that up, you make your pre-drill holes. I use the 1/16 drill bit. And you're going to want to take it off the motor assembly. For me, it just screws off. I would recommend that router. I have had no issues with it. I love DeWalt tools. I am a DeWalt enthusiast, that is for sure. So what you do with that is you're going to want to take, you can use 1/2 inch screws or 1 1/4 screws. 1 1/4 screws will work good, but you're going to have to take your file and file it down. Now, the washer is very important, because especially if you don't want to be scratching up your metal, but this will also help when it's going under a lot and you're using a lot. If you don't take that off and put it back on constantly, you're going to want those washers just because it'll keep it tight. Those are metal washers. So I found it's easiest just to use a screwdriver to mount it first and then go in with your drill. Now, I've also realized you don't need all 4 screws. It's easiest just to use one on the right corner and then the back left corner. This provides good mounting and also quick removal. Now, you can go ahead and do all 4 screws if you're going to be having this on here for a while. But for me, I'm just going to be putting it on and off and just using it from time to time. So for me, just the 2 screws work good. And I go ahead and put the other one on, as you can see in the video. I have the holes pre-drilled from that disc. Now that disc will have the holes aligned in it, and you can make your pencil markings and then pre-drill from the top and go to the bottom and then just meet up where the holes meet. And then you take the router. Now I just pop it off the plastic piece and align it, because this one has a hard time aligning sometimes. But you want to make sure that clip is really loose on there before you tighten it, because if you do not, you will have one hard time getting that router back together, and it will not want to raise and or lower. So what I did is I took my wrench, my adjustable crescent wrench, and just loosen that to where I can just loosen it with my hand or hand tighten it. And you're going to want to get it as loose as you possibly can before you really make it, how I say, very tight. So once you're done with that, you're going to want to reassemble it. And what I did is I used the 3/4 pine, the same thing as you see for the legs. That's an uncut. And then I just clamped it down, and I used that for my fence system, which works wonderful because I have a nice tall fence wall. Now for this build, all the sawdust, it goes directly to the right, and it is nice. It makes a nice little pile. So what you can do is you can put a bag there or something to collect it. Now you could also even take a nice little clamp or like a little C-clamp, not a C-clamp, but a spring clamp, and attach that to the bottom of the board and set up your desk collection or even a shop vac right there and kick it on while you're running it. For me, this setup works great. I love this table. I've used it quite a few times. This design, I've worked out a few kinks to where I've changed it up a little bit just to make it almost perfect. Nothing's perfect, but it's close to. Now, for the simplicity of this compared to other router tables I have seen, is just superb. I am completely happy with it. No issues. Now, for the raising and lowering, you can put extension bits in. So, what I'm saying is you're not going to get a lot of clearance with your bit. You're going to have to use your extension bits for this build to really get a really good depth in your cut. So here I'm going to show you me setting up the fence system. Now I have a pre-marked on there, and it is, I believe, 1 3/4 inches right there. Now I'm taking a scrap of some pallet wood that I had, and I'm going to be showing you a nice cut of this working. So you can use the C-clamps or the quick release clamps. Now, I like the quick release clamps. I have a bunch of them. But I would use a C-clamp over a quick release clamp, especially if I'm doing a bunch of the same cut or routering. So this makes sure and ensures it will stay in place. It's almost like screwing it down. Now, the quick release clamps, they work well too. I have the Irwin's quick release clamps. I forget what brands those C-clamps are, but they work well. For the Irwin quick release clamps, they work well, yes. I have no issues with them, but I prefer to use them for gluing or if I'm going to be moving it around a lot. But for this, I will make it fixed and then just take 30 seconds to release it and adjust it. Now you can see I already have it marked up with that line, but I'm going to show you with the tape that is nice and even. So now all you have to do is plug in your power cord and you're good to go. Let's show you a cut on this thing.
So for a recap for today, we made a router table. Now for me, I made this for free. You know, if you go to construction sites, a lot of times they'll have cut-off pieces like this particle board they use for shelving. And this is just a 3/4 inch, just nice white pine, you know, and then here's a stud. Now all of this, you can go through big dumpsters that they'll have. I mean, a lot of times you can ask them to set stuff aside. and just come pick it up. Now, it's just too small for them to use it, or it's a little bit imperfect and a little bit inconvenient for them to use. A lot of times you'll find, surprisingly, I picked up quite a few 10-feet sheets of this stuff just because of a little bit of warping. But with proper management of the wood, you can reshape it, make it a little bit more plain, or just do a few things. That's how I made this for free besides the router, which I would extremely recommend DeWalt. I've never had a problem with any DeWalt tools. They are my favorite out of all of them, I must say. That and Milwaukee. But also am going to be doing a giveaway. You have to like, comment, and subscribe. If you don't do that, you're not going to be entered in the giveaway. So that's very important. Now, what we have here is, in the next video, I'm going to be showing you how to make, which I made with this, is a really cool Zen candle holder. Now, you see, you have many different styles you can hold this in. You can have it up top, you know, you could get a bunch of these. But this is just a quick, simple giveaway, and I'll be giving away a 10-pack of candles and a pack of matches to go with your candle holder. Just like, comment, and subscribe. Comment a number through 1 through 100, and I will get back to you, and I'm going to be doing a random drawing. Have a nice day.